Welcome to the second video in the Malaysian economy reality check series. So in the last episode I showed you a bit about inflation, what it is, how it works, and how to get the numbers from Bank Negara and calculate it. And we saw how the inflation affected the currency and the value of the currency, in particular in comparison to gold over the past decade. So in this video I want to show you how we can apply this to the GDP and GNI numbers. So GDP stands for Gross Domestic Product and Gross National Income is GNI. And if you want to know the exact definitions, you can find them on Wikipedia under Gross Domestic Product and Gross National Income. But it's basically two indicators that are often used to sort of measure how a country's economy is doing. GDP up, good. GDP down, bad. Same thing with the GNI. So what I've done here is that I've taken the GDP and GNI numbers for the past 10 years, from 2000 until 2010, and I've taken them from the statistics.gov.my website, where there's a PDF that contains these numbers. And it not only has the numbers for the total GDP and GNI, but it also has it per capita, per person basically. So it's you get to see how the whole country is doing, and then you get to see what is the productivity, so to speak, of each individual. And if you take a look at these numbers, you can see that in 2000 we start with a GDP of 356 billion, and in 2010 we have a GDP of 765 billion. If we take this per person, in 2000 it's 15,000 ringgit per person, and in 2010 it becomes 27,000 ringgit. And if you graph this, it looks something like this, and it's a nice pretty curve going up steadily from 2000 until 2010, both for the GDP and GNI, and then also per person, per capita. So that's awesome. So now let's take these numbers and adjust for the value of the ringgit going down. So as I said in the last episode, when you inflate the currency supply, the value of the currency goes down. So you have to take this into consideration when you want to compare numbers from different years. So if we go back to the inflation sheet, which I showed you in the last video, here we have the table where 1 ringgit in 2000 is sort of the baseline. And then as more and more ringgits are printed every year, we adjust the value of that 1 ringgit downwards, so that we see how much is that worth. If we take 1 ringgit in 2000 and we sort of save it, and then we take a look at that 1 ringgit again in 2012, when there's so many more ringgits being printed, what is the value of that in compared to the total amount of ringgits? So we can see here, as I showed you last time, that the value has gone from 1 ringgit down to 32 cents, meaning a loss of 68%. So basically what we can do now is that we can take the GDP numbers for each year and we basically multiply it with the corresponding inflation adjustment factor for each year. So that's what I'm going to be doing next. And then those numbers look like this. So if we go into the table and we look at the function for that, so here I'm taking B10, which is the GDP from 2001 from the previous table, and I take it times the inflation adjustment factor from the previous sheet. And I get the inflation adjusted value of the GDP in 2001. And then just continue down the table and do the same thing until the end. And then the same thing for GNI, the same thing for GDP per capita, and the same thing for GNI per capita. And if we just look at the tables and look at the first and last lines, you can see that it starts at 356 billion, but it ends at 307 billion. So you can see that it's actually going down in terms of real value. Same thing with GNI, starts at 327 and goes down to 296. And when you look at let's see here, there's a format error. That. So if you look at the GDP per capita, it goes from 15,000 ringgit per person per year down to 10,868. So you can sort of already see that this is not going to be pretty. So if we graph this, it looks something like this. So here, if we take the GDP and GNI total for the whole country, it's sort of, kind of stable-ish for a while, but then, of course, in 2008, the value just crumbles, and the reason being that in 2008 there was a massive currency printing going on, and that leads to a crash in the value of the ringgit, and it sort of never recovers from that. So all in all, in the past 10 years, the GDP has gone down, not up. And it gets even worse if we then take this adjusted, inflation-adjusted GDP and we take it per person instead. Because of course, also in these past 10 years, the population has increased quite a bit. So for every person that is born and added to the economy, there's an expectation that there will be more added to the GDP. But we can see here that both lines, both GDP per capita and GNI per capita, are basically going down. And especially in the big 2008 crash, where the value of the ringgit just goes down. It's a small catch up here at the end, but it's a big crash to recover from, which I think it's safe to say that 10 years later, the economy is much worse off than it was in 2000. So basically, when adjusted for inflation, you can see that the economy, as measured by GDP and GNI, in any case, is crashing. And that's the reality check for this episode.